When I inherited $28 million, the first thing I did was look at my 67-year-old mother and say, "You're just dead weight now, Mom. Find somewhere else to die." And I gave her 2 hours to pack up 30 years of her life and disappear. 3 days later, I went from millionaire to beggar, and the woman I called useless became the one holding all the cards. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're from, because this story of how greed destroyed everything I thought I loved is just getting started. Sitting in Harrison Fitzgerald's law office 3 days after Dad's funeral, I wasn't thinking about grief or loss. I was doing math, cold calculating math that would change everything. "Your father built quite a substantial estate, Daniel," Harrison said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. "The consulting business was far more successful than anyone realized." I nodded, but my mind was racing. $28 million. The number felt like electricity in my veins. Amanda and I had been scraping by for years, and now suddenly I was sitting across from Dad's lawyer, learning I was rich beyond my wildest dreams. "Where's Patricia?" Harrison asked, glancing at the empty chair beside me. Mom felt too overwhelmed to attend. I lied smoothly. Truth was, I'd told her the meeting was next week. The last thing I needed was her getting emotional and complicating things. She asked me to handle everything. Harrison continued reading from the will. "To my son, Daniel Carter, I leave 70% of all financial assets and investments, totaling approximately $19.6 million, as well as the primary residence at 1456 Pine Valley Road. $19.6 million, plus the house. I kept my face neutral, but inside, I was already spending it. The house alone had to be worth $500,000 with Denver's market. Dad's cars, his art collection, everything would be mine. And Patricia receives 30% of the financial assets, approximately $8.4 million, along with personal effects and jewelry. $8.4 million for an old woman who'd never worked a real day in her life. What a waste. She'd probably just hoard it or give it away to some charity. At least I knew how to make money work. But then a thought hit me like a sledgehammer. Mom living in my house, watching every dollar I spent, questioning every decision I made. Hovering around like some ancient ghost reminding me of the broke loser I used to be. That wasn't happening, not anymore. There are some additional details we'll discuss later, Harrison said, shuffling papers. I'll call you both in a few days to finalize everything. I barely heard him. I was already planning Mom's exit strategy. She was 67 years old, set to inherit $8 million. She could buy herself a nice little condo, somewhere maybe one of those senior living places where she could play bingo with other useless old people. The more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Why should I have to take care of her now that I was wealthy? She'd been nothing but dead weight for years, cooking meals nobody asked for, worrying about bills that weren't her problem, taking up space in a house that was about to be mine. Betosta, Harrison's voice brought me back. Everything all right? Perfect, I said, standing up. Everything's absolutely perfect. I drove home through downtown Denver with a growing sense of power. Every red light, every pedestrian, every other car on the road looked different through the eyes of a multimillionaire. I wasn't just Daniel Carter anymore. I was Daniel Carter, wealthy businessman. Daniel Carter, property owner. Daniel Carter who didn't need anyone dragging him down, especially not some old woman who'd outlived her usefulness. The house on Pine Valley Road looked different as I pulled into the driveway. It wasn't the family home anymore. It was my estate, my investment, my fresh start. And fresh starts didn't include baggage from the past. I sat in the car for a moment, planning exactly what I'd say to Mom. It needed to be direct, efficient. No room for guilt trips or emotional manipulation. $28 million was going to buy me a lot more than just financial freedom. It was going to buy me a life without dead weight. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. Walking through the front door of 1456 Pine Valley Road, I found Mom in the kitchen making her usual dinner for two. The sight of her shuffling around in Dad's old cardigan setting plates like nothing had changed made my stomach turn. This pathetic routine had to end. Mom, we need to talk, now." She looked up from the stove, her gray hair pulled back in that same tired bun she'd worn for 20 years. "Daniel, dear, how did everything go with Harrison? I was hoping you'd tell me about—" "Oh, sit down." I cut her off. Something in my tone made her freeze. She turned off the burner and slowly sat at the kitchen table, folding her hands like a scolded child. "I inherited everything, Mom. The house, the business, all of it. Dad left you some money, but this house, it's mine now." Her face went pale, but she nodded slowly. "I see. And you want me to... You're dead weight now, Mom. The words hung in the air like a slap. I watched her flinch as if I'd physically hit her. Daniel, I don't understand. I don't need an old woman dragging me down. You've been useless for years, just taking up space, consuming resources, contributing nothing. I leaned forward, making sure she understood every word. This is my house now, my life, my fresh start, and fresh starts don't include baggage. Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. But Daniel, this is my home. I've lived here for 30 years, and now you don't. I stood up, pacing around the kitchen that would soon be renovated to my taste. Look at yourself, Mom. What exactly do you bring to the table? You cook meals nobody asks for. You worry about bills that aren't your problem. You shuffle around this house like some ancient ghost, reminding everyone of how pathetic things used to be. Tears started forming in her eyes, but I felt nothing. If anything, her weakness disgusted me more. You're inheriting $8 million. That's more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. Buy yourself a nice little condo somewhere. Find one of those senior communities where you can play cards with other useless old people who have nothing better to do than wait around to die. Daniel, please. Please what? Please let you stay here and watch me build something great. Please let you question every decision I make with my money. Please let you hover around like some disapproving parent while I finally lived the life I deserve. I walked over and stood directly in front of her chair, looking down at this small, pathetic woman who'd somehow convinced herself she mattered. Here's what's going to happen. You have 2 hours to pack whatever fits in a suitcase. 2 hours, Mom. Then I want you out of my house. She stared up at me with those watery blue eyes, and for a moment I thought she might break down completely. Instead, something strange happened. Her expression shifted, becoming almost calm. 2 hours, she repeated quietly. That's right, and don't think about making this difficult. Don't call relatives, don't make a scene. Don't try to guilt me into changing my mind. This decision is final. Mom stood up slowly, smoothing down her skirt. I understand, Daniel. That was it. No screaming, no begging, no emotional manipulation. I'd expected tears, guilt trips, maybe even threats to call other family members. Instead, she was just accepting it. Good, I said, though her calm reaction was unsettling. I'll be in Dad's office. When I come out in 2 hours, I want you gone. She nodded and walked toward the stairs with that same shuffling gait. At the bottom step, she turned back. Daniel, what? Your father would be very interested to see who you really are. Before I could respond, she was climbing the stairs, leaving me standing alone in the kitchen that was finally completely mine. 2 hours. In 2 hours, I'd be free of the last piece of dead weight holding me back from the life I deserved. I expected congratulations. Instead, I got disgust. The next morning, Mom was gone. Empty rooms, faint lavender perfume, no drama. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt hollow. But that was temporary. Once people heard about my inheritance, they'd respect me. I was Daniel Carter, multimillionaire. I was wrong. Mrs. Peterson was watering roses when I stepped outside. She'd always been friendly, bringing casseroles and chatting. But when she saw me, her face twisted with pure revulsion. Daniel, she said, voice dripping contempt. Morning, Mrs. Peterson. Beautiful day. I was hoping to discuss some renovations. You're a disgrace to your father's memory. The words hit like a physical blow. Excuse me. You heard me. James Carter was a good man. You're a monster. I don't know what you think you know. I know you threw your 67-year-old mother out with 2 hours' notice. I know you called her dead weight. Patricia came to me last night crying. That sweet woman who spent 30 years making that house a home, and you threw her away like trash. My blood ran cold. How could she know what I'd said in my own kitchen? Before I could respond, she slammed her door hard enough to rattle windows. The rest of the day was a nightmare. At the grocery store, Janet saw me and called another cashier. I don't serve people like you, she announced to the entire store. At the gas station, Mike Thompson, Dad's friend for 20 years, turned and walked away. When I followed, he spun around with fury. Don't come near me, you piece of garbage. What you did to Patricia is unforgivable. Mike, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You got rich and decided your mother was too much trouble. You know what we call people like you scum. By afternoon, the entire neighborhood knew. Everyone either glared with open hatred or crossed the street to avoid me. The mailman wouldn't make eye contact. The landscaper packed up and left when he saw me coming. At my regular coffee shop, the barista looked at me like I was diseased. We don't want your business here. What the hell is wrong with everyone? I inherited money. That's not a crime. An elderly man looked up from his newspaper. No, but what you did to your mother is. That woman sacrificed everything and you threw her away like trash the minute you got money. He stood up, walked over, spoke quietly, but clearly. Your father is rolling over in his grave. If you had any decency, you'd be ashamed to show your face in this town. I stumbled out, sat in my car with shaking hands. How did everyone know? How had word spread so fast? Why did they know details about what I'd said? My phone buzzed. Steve, heard what you did to your mom. Don't call me again. My cousin, you're sick, Daniel. This is beyond anything we imagined. One after another, people I'd known for years were cutting me off. Not just disapproving, but treating me like I was contagious. I drove home through hostile streets past neighbors who wouldn't look at me to a house that felt like a prison. Sitting in Dad's chair staring at Pine Valley Road, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't a respected wealthy man, I was a pariah, and somehow everyone in Denver knew exactly what I'd done. The question echoing in my head was horrifying. Harrison's voice was ice cold. I was sitting in Dad's office trying to make sense of the day's disasters when the phone rang. Seeing Harrison's name on the caller ID actually gave me some relief. Finally, someone who'd treat me with the respect I deserved. Harrison, thank God you called. I'm having the strangest day. Everyone in town seems to have lost their minds. Daniel, his voice cut through my words like a blade. We need to talk, immediately. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. This wasn't the gentle grandfatherly Harrison who'd handled Dad's affairs for decades. This was someone else entirely. Of course. Actually, I was hoping we could discuss some investment strategies for my inheritance. I've been thinking about what you did to Patricia is unforgivable. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I felt the blood drain from my face. I'm sorry what... You heard me perfectly well, Daniel. What you did to your mother is the most despicable thing I've witnessed in 40 years of practicing law. My mind raced. How did he know? How did anyone know? And Harrison, I think there's been some misunderstanding. Mom and I had a perfectly reasonable discussion about living arrangements. She agreed it was time for her to have her own place. Stop lying. His voice was pure venom. Patricia called me at 6 this morning crying. She told me everything, Daniel, every cruel word you said to her, every heartless insult you threw at a woman who spent her entire adult life sacrificing for her family. I stood up pacing around the office. This was getting out of hand. Look, Harrison, I may have been a little direct, but Mom needed to understand the new reality. I'm a wealthy man now. I have plans, goals, a future to build. I can't have... You called her dead weight. That's not... You told her she was useless. You gave her 2 hours to pack 30 years of her life into a suitcase and get out of her own home. Each accusation hit like a hammer blow. How could Patricia remember every detail so clearly? How could she betray me like this? Base Harrison, you're only hearing one side of the story. Mom can be emotional dramatic. She's probably exaggerating. They stayed a whining world. Are you denying you said those things? The question hung there demanding an answer. I could lie, but something in Harrison's voice told me he already knew the truth. I may have been blunt, but someone had to be realistic about the situation. Mom's an old woman with no purpose, no contribution to make. Why should I... Jesus Christ, Daniel. For the first time in all the years I'd known him, Harrison's professional composure cracked completely. Do you hear yourself? Do you have any idea what kind of monster you sound like? I'm not a monster. I'm a businessman making practical decisions about my assets. Your mother is not an asset, you sociopathic piece of garbage. The insult hit me like a slap. Harrison Fitzgerald, the most dignified man I'd ever known, had just called me garbage. You can't talk to me like that. I'm your client. I'm paying your fees. Not anymore, you're not. I'm dropping you as a client effective immediately. But first, we're gonna have a conversation, face to face. I don't think that's necessary. My office, 1 hour. If you're not here, I'll assume you're too much of a coward to face the consequences of your actions. Consequences. What consequences? I inherited money and made a reasonable decision about my living situation. 1 hour, Daniel. And when you get here, you're going to learn exactly how wrong you are about everything. The line went dead. I stared at the phone hands, trembling. This was insane. Everyone was acting like I'd committed some terrible crime, when all I'd done was claim what was rightfully mine and make a practical decision about my future. But Harrison's voice, I'd never heard him sound like that, cold, disgusted, furious. What consequences could he possibly mean? 1 hour. I had 1 hour to figure out what the hell was happening to my life. The real will destroyed everything I thought I knew. Walking into Harrison's office felt like entering a courtroom. His secretary wouldn't look at me. Even the building seemed hostile. Harrison sat behind his desk with a thick folder open. Gone was any warmth. This was a judge delivering a death sentence. "Sit down, Daniel." I tried to remain standing. "Harrison, we need to clear the air." "Sit down." He pulled out a document I'd never seen. "This is your father's actual will, the real one. Updated 6 months before his death." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean the real one? You read me the will 3 days ago." "I read you an outdated version. Your father wanted to see what kind of man you really were before you learned what you'd actually inherited." The room started spinning. "That's impossible." "Your father was concerned about your character, your entitlement, so he devised a test." Harrison began reading, voice cold and precise. "I leave my son Daniel 30% of my assets, approximately $8.4 million, contingent upon his treatment of his mother following my death." 30%. 8.4 million, not 19.6. The remaining 70% along with the home and all property I leave to my wife Patricia. The words hit like physical blows. 70% to Mom, the house to Mom. "But there's more, Daniel, the most important part." Harrison's voice dropped to a whisper. "If Daniel fails to treat Patricia with dignity and respect, if he shows cruelty or disregard for her well-being, his entire inheritance shall be forfeit and transferred to Patricia." Silent except for my heart hammering. "No," I whispered. "You can't. You called your mother dead weight. You threw her out with 2 hours' notice." Harrison leaned forward. "Congratulations. You just failed your father's test spectacularly." I shot up, knocking over the chair. "This is insane. You can't take my inheritance because of a conversation? Und destarst te lässt. You abused an elderly woman for money you never actually had." "I didn't abuse anyone." "You called your 67-year-old mother dead weight and threw her out. That's elder abuse." The words crashed over me. Elder abuse, criminal charges, everything gone. So what does this mean? Patricia inherits everything. 28 million the house, all of it. You get nothing. Nothing, less than nothing. She could press charges, sue you, destroy you completely. I collapsed back into the chair. She knew about the real will. Of course she knew. Your father told her months ago. She's been waiting to see what kind of man you really were. The pieces fell into place. Mom's strange calm. Her comment about Dad being interested. The community knowing everything. She told everyone. She told people the truth about what her son became the moment he thought he was rich. I looked up desperately. "Can I appeal this challenge it? With what money, Daniel, you're broke. Worse than broke. You're a pariah who lost everything because you couldn't treat your own mother with basic decency." I sat there staring at the man who just destroyed my world and realized the horrible truth. I hadn't just lost my inheritance. I'd lost everything that mattered, and I'd done it to myself. Mom had been playing chess while I was playing checkers. The full scope of my stupidity hit me as I sat in Harrison's office. Every detail suddenly made perfect sense. "She planned this," I whispered. "She planned all of it." Harrison nodded grimly. "Your mother is smarter than you ever gave her credit for, Daniel. But how did she know I'd react that way? Because she knew you. She watched you for 35 years, saw how you treated people you thought were beneath you." I thought back to all those times I'd dismissed Mom's opinions, rolled my eyes at her concerns. She'd been watching, learning, planning. Your father came to her 6 months before he died. He was worried about your character, your entitlement. So they designed a test. They designed a trap, and I walked right into it. I remembered Mom's strange behavior that night, how calm she'd been when I threw her out, how she'd said Dad would be interested to see who I really was. She was recording me, wasn't she? Harrison's expression told me everything. Your mother documented everything. Your exact words, your tone, your complete lack of remorse. That's how everyone knew. Patricia simply told people the truth about what her son said the moment he thought he was rich. I put my head in my hands. She let me think I was in control. She let me believe I was the smart one. Well, she was 3 steps ahead the entire time. And now, Harrison pulled out another document. Now Patricia Carter is the sole heir to a $28 million estate. She owns the house you threw her out of. She controls every asset you thought belonged to you. The irony was perfect. I'd called mom dead weight, told her she was useless, treated her like she was too stupid to understand money. Meanwhile, she'd orchestrated the most brilliant takedown I'd ever seen. What about me? You get exactly what you deserve. Nothing. Surely there's some provision stastos starksells. Bombor. Read my lips. Nothing. Zero. Not one penny. You are completely broke. Yesterday I thought I was worth 28 million. Today I had nothing. She could have stopped me. She could have told me about the real Will. Why would she? You needed to show your true character. And you did spectacularly. So this was revenge. This was justice. Your father wanted his money to go to someone who deserved it. Someone who understood family loyalty and basic human decency. I looked around Harrison's office at the comfortable furniture bought with fees from successful people who knew how to treat others with respect. She won. She didn't just win, Daniel. She destroyed you so completely you'll never recover. And the most beautiful part, you did it all to yourself. Outside, Denver was continuing normally. People working, families having dinner life going on. But for me, everything had ended. I was 35, broke, unemployed, facing possible criminal charges. And my 67-year-old mother, the woman I'd called useless dead weight, had just outplayed me so thoroughly I'd never even seen it coming. The student had become the master, and I'd been played by the best. I went from millionaire to criminal in 24 hours. Walking out of Harrison's office, I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. My phone buzzed nonstop with missed calls and messages. Amanda, Daniel, I heard what happened. We need to talk. Now. Unknown number. This is Detective Sarah Martinez with Denver PD. We need to discuss elder abuse charges. Call immediately. Elder abuse charges, criminal charges. I drove home in a daze. Amanda was waiting with 2 suitcases and a face like stone. Amanda, thank God. I need to explain. Explain what? How you threw your mother out. How you called her dead weight. It's not what you think. There were circumstances. Stop talking. Mrs. Peterson told me everything. Every cruel word you spoke to that sweet woman. You have to understand. I thought I was rich. So you decided your mother was disposable. I reached for her, but she stepped back like I was diseased. I can't be married to a monster, Daniel. Oh, a monster, I made a mistake. You made a choice. Money over family, cruelty over compassion. She handed me divorce papers. I'm filing tomorrow. We can work through this. I'll apologize to Mom. With what money you're broke. Worse than broke. You're about to be arrested. She drove away, leaving me alone with divorce papers I couldn't afford to fight. Detective Martinez arrived the next day with a warrant. Elder abuse charges were serious in Colorado. Throwing an elderly person out, verbal abuse, emotional cruelty, potential jail time. Local news picked up the story. Local man inherits millions, immediately throws mother out. My photo on the evening broadcast identified as a suspected elder abuser. Grocery stores wouldn't serve me. Restaurants asked me to leave. My gym canceled my membership. The bank froze my accounts. I called old friends, but word had spread. Steve hung up. College buddies blocked my number. Even distant relatives wanted nothing to do with me. Within a week, I was completely alone. I sat in Dad's empty house, Mom's house now. Surrounded by furniture, I couldn't keep eating takeout from the one place still delivering. The irony was crushing. I'd thrown Mom out because she was dead weight. Now I was the one with no money, no friends, no future, no family. The woman I'd called useless was living on $28 million. The woman I'd said was dragging me down was the respected community member, while I was the pariah everyone avoided. My phone rang. Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about the elder abuse charges. Care to comment on why you threw your elderly mother out? I hung up. Outside, Denver continued normally. Inside, I was drowning in consequences of believing I was better than everyone else. The house felt like a tomb. Every room reminded me of what I'd lost. Dad's office where I'd planned my smart business decisions. The kitchen where I'd called Mom dead weight. The living room where Amanda had handed me divorce papers. I'd lost everything. My inheritance, my wife, my friends, my reputation, my future. And I'd done it all to myself in less than 24 hours. 3 days after my world collapsed, I sat alone in Dad's study, surrounded by boxes of papers I'd soon hand over to Mom. The house would be hers within the week. I'd be nowhere. I wasn't looking for anything specific, maybe just trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong, how the man I trusted most had orchestrated my downfall. Then I found a folder marked Confidential, JC Personal. Inside were documents that shattered everything I thought I knew about him. FBI letterhead, official seals, correspondence stretching back 12 years. Dear Mr. Carter, thank you for your continued cooperation in Operation Clean Sweep. Your information on the Torino family's money laundering has been invaluable. I read it 3 times before it made sense. Dad had been working with the FBI for over a decade. More letters confirmed it. James, your work as a confidential informant has led to 17 arrests and the seizure of over $40 million in criminal assets. The quiet consultant I thought I knew had been living a secret life helping take down organized crime. But the handwritten note at the bottom destroyed me. Sarah, I'm worried about Daniel. He's entitled, arrogant, dismissive of people he thinks are beneath him. If he can't treat Patricia with decency when he believes he's rich, he doesn't deserve what I've built. The test will reveal his true character. Narigor. It was dated 8 months ago. 8 months before he had already seen through me, already planned everything. There were more notes about my attitude toward money, how I treated people in service jobs, how I ignored Mom's sacrifices. Daniel acts like success is owed to him. If he inherits everything without proving he deserves it, he'll become a monster. That word monster hit like a blow, the same word Amanda had used. Then I read the plan, the will, the test, the consequences. Dad had thought of everything, even predicting what I would do. If Daniel throws Patricia out, he'll reveal himself completely. No decent man abandons his mother for money. I sat in his chair, the same one where I'd once imagined my future, proud of being the chosen heir. But I hadn't been chosen. I'd been tested, and I had failed spectacularly. Then I found a sealed envelope with my name. Inside was Dad's final letter. Daniel, if you're reading this, you failed the test. You chose money over family, cruelty over compassion. I'm not surprised, but I'm heartbroken. Yet I still believe in redemption. If you've lost everything because of your own choices, maybe there's hope. The question is, what will you do now, Dad? I sat there in the fading light, holding the letter, finally understanding the depth of his love and his disappointment. Dad hadn't just left me an inheritance. He'd left me a mirror. And for the first time, I saw the man I had become. Ugly, hollow, but not beyond change. Maybe I could still find Mom. Maybe I could still become the son he believed I could be if it wasn't too late. Finding Mom was harder than losing everything. I'd spent 3 days calling every hotel and apartment complex in Denver. Patricia Carter had vanished completely. No forwarding address, no mutual friends willing to help the man who'd thrown his elderly mother into the street. Mrs. Peterson slammed her door when I asked where Mom was staying. Mike threatened to call police if I didn't leave. Even the mailman refused to speak to me. I was sitting outside Mom's old church when Father Rodriguez emerged from evening service. Father, please, I need to find my mother. He looked at me with profound disappointment. Daniel, what you did to Patricia was unconscionable. I know, that's why I need to find her. I need to apologize. Apologize? You think that fixes throwing a 67-year-old woman out? Calling her dead weight or stein? Each word was a knife twist. Hearing my cruelty repeated made it sound even worse. Father, I was wrong. Completely horribly wrong. I need to make this right. He studied my face. She's staying at Riverside Apartments on Colfax, Unit 2B. But Daniel, if you hurt that woman anymore... I drove to Riverside, rehearsing what I'd say, but every word felt inadequate. How do you apologize for calling your mother useless? The flashbacks kept hitting me. Mom's face when I'd said those things. How she'd flinched like I'd struck her. How small she'd looked in Dad's old cardigan. You're dead weight now, Mom. The words echoed, sounding more monstrous each time. What kind of person says that to their mother? What kind of son throws away 30 years of love for money he didn't even have? I remembered her making my favorite meals when I was sick, staying up with my nightmares, working part-time to help pay for college while Dad built his business. Years of quiet sacrifice repaid by calling her worthless. You've been useless for years, just taking up space. How could I have said that? To the woman who'd given up her dreams to raise me, who'd nursed Dad while I was too busy to visit. Riverside Apartments were exactly what I'd expected. Run-down complex where people went when they had nowhere else. Paint-peeling rust on railings, the smell of desperation. This was where Patricia Carter, who'd lived beautifully on Pine Valley Road for 30 years, was now staying. Because of me. Unit 2B was second floor, accessed by external stairs that looked decades old. I stood outside her door for 10 minutes, trying to find courage. What if she refused to see me? called police. Looked at me with the same disgust everyone else showed. But I had to try. Dad's letter was clear. This was my chance at redemption, maybe my only chance. I raised my hand to knock, then froze, hearing something that broke my heart completely. Mom was crying, soft muffled sobs through thin walls. The woman I'd called dead weight was crying alone in a cheap apartment, exiled from her home by the son she'd loved her whole life. I knocked softly. "Who is it?" Her voice was small, cautious, afraid. "It's me, Mom. It's Daniel." Mom looked at me like I was a stranger. The door opened slowly, revealing a woman I barely recognized. Patricia Carter looked fragile and small. Her gray hair was uncombed, eyes red from crying, wearing the same clothes from 3 days ago. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" "Mom, please, can I come in? I need to talk to you." She hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was tiny, maybe 400 square feet. A fold-out couch, small table, outdated kitchenette. 2 suitcases in the corner, still unpacked. This was what I'd reduced my mother to. "Is say what you came to say?" she said, not offering me a seat. I looked at her in this awful apartment, and my rehearsed words disappeared. Only truth remained. "I called you dead weight useless. I told you that you'd been taking up space for years, dragging me down." My voice cracked. "I was wrong about everything, Mom. Everything." She watched me with tired eyes. "I found Dad's papers. I know about the FBI, the test, everything he wrote about me." Tears streamed down my face. He knew what I was becoming. He knew I was turning into a monster. "You're not a monster, Daniel. You're my son. But the things you said, I know how horrible they were. I keep hearing them over and over, the way you looked when I said them." I stepped closer desperately. Mom, I thought I was rich, successful, and I convinced myself that meant I was better than everyone, better than you. So money made you cruel." "No, I was already cruel. The money just gave me permission to show it." Something shifted in her expression. Not forgiveness, but recognition that I was finally honest. "Do you know what hurt the most?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. It wasn't being thrown out or called useless. She walked to the window. It was realizing my son had become someone who could look at his elderly mother and see nothing but an inconvenience. The words destroyed me. "I spent 35 years loving you, Daniel, sacrificing for you. I gave up teaching to raise you, worked nights for your college, nursed your father while you were too busy to visit." Each sentence was true, each one devastating. "When you thought you were wealthy, you threw me away like garbage." "I'm sorry." The words were pathetic. "I'm so sorry, Mom." She turned from the window. "Are you sorry because you lost everything, or because you hurt me?" The most important question anyone had ever asked me. "I'm sorry because I hurt you, because I became someone who could hurt you, because I forgot you're the most important person in my life." She studied my face, searching for truth or hope. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Daniel." Death sentence, but I nodded. "I understand. But I still love you. Even after everything, I still love you. That's what makes this so hard." She sat on the couch, looking every one of her 67 years. "I need time to think. I need to decide if the son I raised is still in there somewhere, or if he's gone forever. Forgiveness isn't about deserving it." I sat in my car outside Riverside Apartments for 2 hours, replaying our conversation. She needed time to think. I'd destroyed 35 years of love in one evening. 2 hours couldn't fix that. But she'd said she still loved me, more than I deserved. 3 days later, my phone rang. Mom's number. "Daniel, can you come back? I'd like to talk." I broke every speed limit getting there. This time she invited me to sit. She'd unpacked, made the apartment look like home. Photos on the table. Dad, me as a child, our family when we were whole. "I've been thinking about what you said, about being sorry because you hurt me, not because you lost everything." I nodded, afraid to speak. "Your father wrote that people can change, but only if they truly want to. Only if they're willing to do the hard work of becoming better." She picked up a photo, me at 8, gap-toothed and grinning, hugging her tight. I look at this picture and see the boy I raised, who brought me flowers from the neighbor's garden, who cried when he stepped on an ant, who told me he loved me every night. Tears streamed down both our faces. That boy is still in there somewhere, isn't he? "I hope so, Mom. I really hope so." She set the photo down. "I've decided to give you a chance. Not forgiveness, not yet. But a chance to prove that the son I raised is still alive." Relief flooded through me, followed by terror. "What do I need to do?" "Let's first get a job, any job. Learn what it means to work instead of expecting handouts." I nodded eagerly. I second volunteer somewhere, help people with less than you, learn what service means. Yes, anything. Third therapy, figure out how you became someone who could treat his mother like garbage and make sure it never happens again. Each condition felt like a lifeline. It's finally proved to me through actions, not words, that you understand what family really means. How long do I have? As long as it takes, Daniel. This isn't a test you can cram for. This is about becoming a different person, a better person. I looked around the tiny apartment where my mother lived because of my cruelty. I'll do it, Mom, all of it. I'll prove Dad was right. People can change. She smiled then, the first real smile since this nightmare began. I hope so, sweetheart, because despite everything, I want my son back. I left that apartment with something I hadn't had in weeks: hope. Not for money or success, but for something infinitely more valuable. A chance to become the man my mother raised me to be. A chance to earn back the love I'd thrown away. A chance at redemption. 6 months later, I was a different man. I'm recording this story from my small apartment on the east side of Denver. Not because I have to live here, but because I choose to. It's humble, clean, and earned with my own hands. Every piece of furniture, every meal, every bill paid, with money I made washing dishes at Martinez Family Restaurant. Yes, washing dishes. The son who once thought he was too good for manual labor now finds peace in the rhythm of hot water and soap, in the simple satisfaction of making something clean. Mom was right about work. Real work. The kind that makes your back ache and your hands rough, teaches you things that inheriting millions never could. It teaches you the value of every dollar, the dignity of earning your keep, the humility that comes from starting at the bottom. The therapy sessions were harder than any job. Sitting in Dr. Sarah Chen's office every Tuesday dissecting the entitled, selfish man I'd become was like performing surgery on my own soul. But slowly, painfully, I began to understand how I'd lost my way. The volunteering changed everything else. 3 nights a week at the Denver Rescue Mission, serving meals to homeless veterans' families, down on their luck elderly people with nowhere else to go. People just like Mom could have been if she hadn't had $28 million to fall back on. I met a man named Frank there, 73 years old, whose son had kicked him out for being too much trouble. The parallels weren't lost on me. I was looking at what I could have done to my own mother if she hadn't been protected by Dad's foresight. Frank died alone in a shelter 2 months ago. His son never came to the funeral. That's when I truly understood what I'd almost become. Mom and I have dinner every Sunday now, not at fancy restaurants. At her new place, a comfortable apartment she chose herself, or sometimes at my little kitchen table. We cook together, talk about everything except money, and slowly rebuild what I destroyed. She still hasn't fully forgiven me. Maybe she never will, but she sees the man I'm becoming, and that's enough for now. The other day she told me something that broke my heart in the best way possible. I'm proud of you, Daniel. Not for the money you once thought you had not, for the success you thought you deserved, but for the work you're doing to become a good man. A good man. Not a rich man, not a successful man, but a good man. I make $32,000 a year now. I drive a used Honda shop at thrift stores and budget carefully for everything. By the standards of the man I used to be, I'm poor. By the standards of who I am now, I'm the richest I've ever been. Because I have something, money can't buy my mother's respect, earn back one honest day at a time. I have friends who value character over bank accounts. I have work that matters, even if it's just making sure plates are clean for the next customer. Most importantly, I have the knowledge that family isn't something you inherit. It's something you choose to honor every single day. If you're listening to this story, maybe you recognize something in it. Maybe you've let money or success or the promise of wealth make you forget what really matters. Maybe you've treated people you love like they're disposable. It's not too late to change. It's never too late to choose love over greed, humility over entitlement, family over fortune. Trust me, I learned the hard way the only inheritance that truly matters is the love you give and receive. Everything else is just dead weight. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, your family is worth more than all the money in the world. The hardest lesson I learned from this betrayal story isn't about money. It's about the person you become when you think you deserve more than others. God gave me everything I needed: a loving mother, a wise father, and a chance at redemption. But I almost threw it all away for greed. To anyone listening to this family drama story, don't be like me. Don't let wealth, real or imagined, turn you into someone who sees family as obstacles instead of blessings. I called my own mother dead weight, words that still haunt me every single day. Parents, don't spoil your children so much that they never learn the value of sacrifice. Teach them that privilege comes with responsibility, that love isn't something you can take for granted. My father saw my entitled heart and created a test that saved my soul, even though it cost me everything. This betrayal story taught me that God's grace works in mysterious ways. When I lost $28 million, I found something worth infinitely more: my humanity. When I hit rock bottom washing dishes and living paycheck to paycheck, I discovered what real wealth looks like. The most painful family drama story often becomes the most beautiful redemption story. God doesn't waste our failures. He uses them to reshape our hearts. Today, I'm grateful for every consequence of my cruelty, because it led me back to what matters: family, forgiveness, and faith. Your inheritance isn't your bank account. It's the love you give and receive. Choose family over fortune every single time. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your own family stories, the good, the bad, and the redeemed. Your voice matters, and your story could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Remember, it's never too late to choose love over greed.